Hey, welcome to the Peep Show, episode
Once
7,
again,
Talk. And again, the whole idea behind this is just to get some military vehicle conversation going. Think of it as much as like a podcast. I mean, our visuals aren't exactly exciting. I'm sure you get tired of looking at me. My guests are usually a little more handsome than me, but not much. So, anyway, today's guest, Peter Lahman. Say hello, Pete.
hello, Peter
Yeah, now
Lahman out here in Washington State, out in the Northwest.
Yeah, Pete lives somewhere between like Portland and Olympia, kind of in a smaller town out there. So and Peter and I have a bit of a background. I spent a lot of time over Fort Lewis and ran into Pete, and then eventually we went to Normandy together for the 60th anniversary.
Mhm.
So one of my better memories is we were in that little French farmhouse trying to find plants to dump the Calvados that the farmer gave us.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting story. The veterans, when they heard that I was going to Normandy, I had several veterans tell me that we had to have Calvados. And so we went to Belgium and met our friend Frederick in Belgium. And I told him, the veterans told me we need a Calvados. And he says, "Oh, you need Calvados. We will get you Calvados." And so we ended up in a little farm behind Omaha Beach, and grandfather and grandmother there. Frederick talks with them, and grandpa goes out to the barn and comes out with a dusty bottle, and grandmama comes out with the little shot glasses, and they crack it and they pour them up and shoot it back. And I couldn't breathe for 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that it was like rocket fuel. Like I'm pretty. I sort of wonder if maybe they hadn't found a stash of V2 fuel
Yeah.
somewhere in there. But anyway, Pete's
Uh,
got a really interesting collection of a lot of different stuff, and it's pretty wide ranging. So I'll just go ahead and kind of let you tell people what you've got.
I'll just I'll start how I got into this.
Okay.
I've kind of collected since I was a youngster. I had 7 uncles and an aunt in the service in World War II, and so I got some of their artifacts and started collecting. And then I ended up being a dud, and I didn't make it into the military. And I was living in Oklahoma, and a friend took me to the Dallas Military Collector Show, and this was about 1980, 81. And I thought, oh, it's okay to collect this. So I started getting more active in collecting, and I did my first historical display in 1981 for a school in Oklahoma for Veterans Day. And I took in some artifacts, and we had show and tell with the kids, and we talked about how the artifacts got here and that kind of thing. And my father actually had an M38A1 back in the late 60s. And so that was my introduction to military vehicles. But back then it was sporterized. I mean, he sporterized it up, so it wasn't stock original. And then in 1988, I had the chance to buy an M38A1 that was stock original from a rural fire department, and I bought it, and that was my first military vehicle. And today, I think right now I have 8 military vehicles, 6 of which run. 2 are future restoration projects, including a Ford GP and a M151. So that's kind of it. And I have a 42 GPW that we use in the parades and run around with, and I have my newest truck is a 1981 M923A2 that belonged to a Patriot missile battery, and maybe had time in Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. And my only known combat vehicle is I have a 1984 M923 that belonged to the 224th Combat Engineers of the Oregon National Guard, and it went to Iraq in 2003, 2004.
So
And
that's your ambulance?
no, that's my 5 ton M923 5 ton.
Oh, got it. Got it.
So, and they I learned that by accident. We were doing a display, and a man walked by and he looked at the truck and he goes, "Oh, that's one of the trucks out of my motor pool." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." And he said, "Well, I was a private and we went to Iraq in 2003. And then when we came back, and the man was still in, he was a motor pool sergeant for him, at the
Mhm.
time that I talked to him. So,
Yeah, the
um,
amount of military vehicles and military that's on the western edge of the Cascades just blows my mind. The stuff that you guys have been able to find, like the early ski troop gear.
mhm.
And fortunately, I was out there at the time I was collecting that stuff, and then just the vehicles that you found, and isn't there still that rumor that Schwimmwagen somewhere in a river or something,
Now
or
that one I haven't heard, but
GPA or something like that?
yeah, that one I have not heard. But I mean, there is a couple Schwimmwagens out here, and there's a couple GPAs around as well. I You never know what you're going to find. Last summer I went to a flea market and I bought 3 fan belts that are marked Ford GPA.
Hmm.
They're new old stock fan belts, and I thought, well, how neat is that? Here's, if you have a GPA, here is the fan belt for that GPA.
Right,
So
right.
I mean,
That's amazing.
it would, it would be display only, I would think, at this time, but they're in perfect condition. So
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, and then you've also got a few unique items in your collection too, which we can talk about the one a little bit later. And I can pull up some pictures of it later, but let's give people a little bit of a teaser.
yeah, I do. That's my I've been told that I need to do an inventory of my collection. Well, that's kind of rough, and it hasn't really happened. But probably one of the things that I like the best is I have an original Case V42 knife, and I bought it at the Puyallup Gun Show probably 30 years ago now. And when it came in, I got a name with it, but I was never able to track the man down as being a member of the First Special Service Forces group.
Hmm.
Um, and now it's buried in my paperwork and my files, and I couldn't even tell you the name that was on it, but it was kind of an odd name. But I
Hmm.
did a display probably 15 years ago for the 5th Special Forces group for Menton Day, and they had 5 members of the Special Forces, 1st Special Forces group there, 5 of the original men, and every one of them came up to me to see that knife.
Hmm.
And one of the men, he was probably about 5'5" and 85 years old, and he's fingering the knife, and he looks up at me and he goes, "You want to try me out?" And I said, "No, sir. I think you know what to do with that knife. I don't think I want to try you."
Yeah, no, I was thinking more along the lines of something that's Italian in your collection.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. We're back on the vehicle track here.
Yeah.
I have a 1940 or 40 or 41. I'm not sure the exact date, but it's a Vollugrafo Aeromoto. It was built by the Italians, and it was used by the German paratroopers as their, little transport scooter on the ground. Americans had the Cushman, the British had the Well bike, and the Germans used the Vollugrafo. And this bike actually was sent home by a great uncle, one of my uncles that was in World War II. Uh, he was a driver mechanic with the 165th Medical Battalion, Battle of the Bulge time period, and they were an army of occupation. And in September 1945, he mailed this bike home to Denver. Well, they had this bike. I can't tell you the height and the length because I didn't think about it before we had this talk, but it weighs 120 pounds. Well, they could mail things home, but they had size limitations and weight limitations. And they, so you can almost see it in the picture that Tim's showing there. I don't know if my pointers are, but there's a weld there and there's a weld up there. He had to take this bike all apart and then box it up and send it home. Well, he had to cut the frame so it would fit in the dimensions, and he had to cut the handlebars because they were too tall. So when he got home, he welded them back together, and this was in
Goes
1946,
on the
and he was
handlebars, like right in here somewhere, or
yes.
okay.
I don't know. I don't know if you can see. Can you see my black pointer there, Tim?
I can't, but I'm
Oh,
I'm
okay,
using my
okay, okay.
own.
Yeah,
and
yeah, those
there's like a little
handlebars are
crossbar
designed.
there on the
Yeah,
handlebars. Is that kind of where it's been rejoined?
no, that crossbar is pinned, and that's part of the fold down
Oh, got
feature.
it.
So it's like our Cushman wasn't all that collapsible, but the British well bike was pretty collapsible. Anyway,
Hmm.
you could fold the handlebars down on it, and
Okay, yeah.
the foot pegs would fold up as well. Um, I had it was missing the foot pegs, and I got a hold of a man in Italy, and he sent me the dimensions. So I went to the machine shop, and they made me foot pegs to his dimensions, and we go to put them on, and they don't fit. So we had to remanufacture them so that they fit.
Hmm.
And what we found out, also, I had to have the fuel tank cap right there at the left front of the seat, the black circle. I had to have that manufactured. That was originally a Bakelite part, and the Bakelite had deteriorated and it had fallen into pieces inside the tank.
Hmm.
So I took it to a local machine shop, and the man said, "Oh, yeah, I can do that for you." Well, he called me a week or so later, and he said, "It is the threads on it are neither metric nor standard." He said, "They have to be Italian, something totally different."
Wow.
So he had to hand cut. He said, "If I charged you for how many hours I had into trying to make that thing fit," but he did a beautiful job on it. It's just gorgeous work.
Hmm.
Uh, I did have it running when I first got it, and I tried to get it going last year, and I just couldn't quite get it to fire. So I'm not sure what's missing on it, or what's out of whack. But
And
when I
what's
got it,
unusual is it's got the double wheel set.
yeah, though that bike, there's three models of those, or three types. This is a type one. The type ones can be distinguished because they have dual tires front and rear.
Hmm.
Type two and type three have single tires.
Hmm.
And those tires are Pirelli 12.5 by, I think, two and a quarter, two and a half. And I sent a note to Pirelli back when I got it to see if I could get some new tires, and they just laughed. Well, I've done some research recently, and somebody got the molds, and they made some tires that are the exact tire to that tire.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not riding it, so I don't really need them. But
Right. And didn't you say the inner tubes were red?
yeah, they were red rubber inner tubes, which is real old school.
Uh-huh.
But they were all cracked and not usable. So I pulled them out, and since I couldn't find the right inner tube, I I was at the local hardware store, and they have a bicycle department, and I'm talking to the guy, and he goes, "Well, here, why don't you try these?" They were like a 13 instead of a 12 and a half, and they were for a children's child scooter. And
Hmm.
so I put those in just so they would hold air and you could roll it around
Hmm.
and not damage the tires. So um, no, it's 125 cc two-stroke engine, and there's no muffler on it. The exhaust vents into the frame. And when I got this bike, I got Walter Bates was the man that sent it home. I got his unit history as well, and there were captions in there where other guys in the unit had signed his book, and they said something about keeping the buzz bomb going. So their nickname for this thing was the buzz bomb. Well, 125 cc out of about an 18-inch long straight pipe is pretty noisy. So,
Yeah, and you said you've had it running, so
yes, yeah.
yeah.
I when I brought that home, it was in Denver. So I went out to Denver, picked it up, brought it home, and I thought, I wonder. And I dumped a little bit of mixed gas in it. 4 kicks, it started up, and I rode it around the yard.
Wow.
And after it had set for 40 years. So
Any idea what it's worth?
I have no idea. It's you see Cushmans for sale once in a while. You see well bikes for sale. I've never seen one of these for sale. So I
Hmm.
and I have a fair idea what the Cushmans and the well bikes go for, and this is a heck of a lot more scarce than one of them. So
Yeah,
I
Cushmans are upwards of 10 right now. In fact, I saw some listed for 19, 100% original, but I
yeah
mean that's
Yeah.
Guess I'm buying some of those. Just like I
Yeah.
missed buying the
I mean,
Stewart tank when they were 35,000.
yeah, you can look at this and what's a Fallschirmjäger helmet go for now? You know, two or three thousand dollars,
Yeah.
and you can find them. You, you're not going to find one of these. This is pretty much it. You know,
Hmm.
so I found in my research back in the late '80s, early '90s, I found 4 in Italy, 2 in Germany, 1 in England, and this one. So,
Yeah,
um,
I think I saw something where a museum in France now has two of these, and
oh, okay.
that may be where these are these your pictures or are these?
That's my picture right there that you have up. That's my picture as well.
Okay,
Yeah, those are
that's
displays.
that's
I
yours, and there were
Yeah.
some others somewhere in here that I saw of another one, and just keep going here. Airborne scooters. I'm pretty sure is this one? Airborne scooters. I was thumbing through this. I just joined this group, and there was some from
Yeah,
the
I
museum
just
was posting
joined
about it.
this Cushman group. Oh, there
There it
it is
is.
right there.
Yeah.
Huh. Huh. He has a different light than I have. And huh. His carburetor cover's a little bit different. Huh. Yeah, no, that looks, yeah, and that one's been restored. Mine's
Hmm.
original.
Well, and that's my my hot topic question. We'll come back to that at the very end, and that is, when should you keep original patina? When should you restore it?
Uh,
But we'll
boy,
come
that's
back to
that's
that. Again,
yeah, that's a
here's
great
just
area of debate. Well,
some
see,
more.
he's got the twin tires on it, so that's a first pattern too.
Uh-huh.
That's huh.
Anyway, I thought it was a
Yeah.
little different military vehicle. Very few people have heard of, and very few people have seen of. Of course, first time I saw it was in the garage, just kind of in the corner.
When when I first got my bike, I corresponded with Guy Franz Oren. He's the one that founded the Bastogne Historical Center,
Hmm.
and he sent me a note back, and he told me that he had like 200 vehicles in his collection, and he did not have one of these. And so he admired it.
Hmm.
Uh,
Now, I know that you have a pretty active group up there in the Pacific Northwest, and you guys go out and do a lot of different events, and it seems like you guys are always posting parades. I know there's the
mhm,
Friends of Willie and Joe is one
mhm,
group, and then there's
yeah,
some others, and you're also involved with a group with a Vietnam patrol boat. Is that right?
yeah. The game wardens of Vietnam, the Northwest chapter, and they adopted me because I'm still young enough to crawl in the hold and scrape paint. So, um, most of the guys are at least 10 years older than me. So, um, but yeah, we have one operational boat, and we have boat number 2 is extremely close. We're hoping this year that we'll have both boats on the water. When they ran in Vietnam, they ran in 2 boat patrols, and so we'd like to get that up and get a couple pictures.
Mhm. What kind of events do you do with those boats?
Um, any chance that we can get them on the water? Well, the boat weighs roughly 16,000 pounds, and it's 32 feet long, and we have to have it lifted into the water. We don't trailer it into the water, because that would create a whole new set of problems for our trailer loading it into salt water. So we're at the mercy of who's going to do the lift for us and when. And we go to Des Moines up south of Seattle, and they like us there, and they have a couple events. And if we can be there at the same time, they'll give us dock space, and that's we'll sell some t-shirts, and that's how we pay for the maintenance that we do on the boat and
Hmm.
operation.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty cool. How big is the patrol boat?
32 feet long, 11 feet 9 inches wide, and it weighs 16,000 pounds. Um, and the boat that we have is essentially fully operational except for weapons. And we don't have our radio set up right, and our we have the right radios. We just don't have them set up because we don't have anybody to talk to, and we don't have radar on it. But we do have a radar unit, and we're under debate whether we actually install it or not. But,
Hmm. Yeah,
but
I'm trying to find some pictures of it here. Here we go. This is a vintage picture.
yeah, some people want the PBR just to run, and some of us want it to be like you just walked onto it off the dock in Vietnam. And yep, yep, there they are. Yeah, you can't quite see the,
The bow on it.
well, the tail is, they stamp the numbers in the tail. And our operations boat is 7336, and it was actually it was a training boat, like out of San Diego. So it never made it to Vietnam. The other boat that we're working on that we almost have ready for the water, it was an Army boat. Well, they had, now there we are in the water in the marina, and coming into dock, and so there's our tail numbers on it.
Hmm.
We've had Pacific Power in Kent has rebuilt both engines for us, so it runs really well. We've had a couple injector problems, but we've got those worked out. The chief in that last picture, Chief Lane, he's with the security boat detachment at Bangor.
Hmm.
The man
This
on the
guy.
left, yeah, they're like the grandsons and lineage of the PBR guys in Vietnam. And
Cool.
so they'll come out, they'll help with boat handling and help with the events.
Hmm. Somewhere around here, there's a Navy hydrofoil ship. In fact, it was Missouri River, a little ways from me here,
Mhm.
just in some small town. Some guy had it and was tied up on the Missouri River,
Uh-huh.
maybe in like a stream, pretty deep stream or small river. And I've heard it's been moved since then, but I may have to go try and track that thing down. But it's one of those ones that it has the big armature that then goes into the water and then it goes up
Uh-huh.
to speed and the whole thing runs above the water.
Yeah. I
So
think I I know what you're talking about, and I think they only made about 3 of those.
yeah.
And there's one down along the Columbia River that's derelict, just sitting there. Somebody bought it, and then they never did anything with it. It's been vandalized, and but you're talking turbine engines and a
Yeah.
hundred and some feet long. I mean, it would cost a fort. The PBR is bad enough to maintain financial wise. And this is 32 feet long. You take one that's a hundred and some feet long, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it was so funny because I heard about it and I went on Google Earth and found the thing. It was up somewhere near like Glasgow, Missouri, which
Mhm,
is
mhm,
about halfway between St. Louis and Kansas City on the Missouri River. Maybe like 60% towards Kansas City from St. Louis. Uh,
mhm,
and I was like, why is that thing there? And some guy owned it, and I think he sold it. And I think he was wanting to make it into like a tourist thing. Of course, the more
mhm.
infamous boat in this part of the world, Navy boat, is the USS Inaugural, which is a minesweeper that was actually right outside of the St. Louis Arch.
Mhm.
And the flood of '93 basically took it away and sank it. And now it's kind of laying
Oh,
on its
yeah.
side down near the Jefferson Barracks Bridge on the south end of St.
Oh,
Louis.
wow.
Um, and it makes a reappearance every once in a while when the river gets low.
Huh.
And there was a
Wow.
guy that I knew who was involved. There was some questions about what happened to the guns on it and some
Mhm.
other stuff. But yeah, I think it's
Uh,
just so cool that you guys, and not many people have boats like
I
that.
think there's about a half a dozen PBRs. This is a Mark II boat, and there's Mark Ones. I think there's about half a dozen of them that are functional around the country. I mean, they're
Hmm.
not, we have actually the 2 boats, and then we have a hull that we're storing for a man in New Zealand. And because of COVID, he can't get it into New Zealand, and he can't come here and visit and work on it or do anything. So So
You,
we
you
have possession of it temporarily.
you can't vaccinate the hull and put a mask on it?
Yeah, I don't know. Uh,
So weird.
yeah,
Okay. Um, and again, this is a picture of your M38A1. I've actually driven this. I drove this in a parade one time. And actually,
yeah,
I've really liked the M38A1. I love how
yeah,
it drives. I think it's kind of the highest form of military Jeep. The M151
yeah,
is decent,
yeah.
but I it's just a kind of a different animal. And I think
This
the
pic,
M151 has probably as much in common with a Humvee as it does a Jeep.
yeah.
But
This picture you're showing, this is a 1953 M38A1. It currently has 14,000 miles on it. And this was a picture I just took in the last week or so. Um, it's it's original. It's got some repaint on it, and the bumper numbers are not original. I painted those on it, but the rest of it's original. The hood lettering is the vinyl lettering that they came out with during Vietnam, mid 60s. They started
mhm,
going to vinyl letters rather than painted, and those were on it, and they were painted over, as was the practice in the day. They'd paint over the stars and paint over the numbers, and I took lacquer thinner and carefully cleaned them off. So it's fully operational and it's original. So
mhm.
uh, it's I've seen ones up here that are restored, but this is the only one I've seen in the Northwest in the what 12, 30, 30, what 34 years that I've owned it.
Hmm.
That's like this one. So
Yeah, it's a great Jeep. I really enjoyed driving it. This is had a plate off of it, I think.
yep, 68,014 is the serial number, and it's 1253 was the date of delivery. So
Hmm. Well, and then of course this picture. Um, Peep might not have made it to be interviewed today if this had not turned out differently than it did. Why don't you tell people what's going on here?
this is it doesn't look like it there, but this is actually a pretty steep hill, and I lost traction. I could not go any further up. And as I'm trying to back down, my left rear tire caught the edge of the single paved lane. Well, behind me, you can see some trees. It's that way all the way up past the Jeep, and it's about a 25 foot drop through the trees.
Oh, over in here.
I, yes, over in there. And I'm
Uh,
thinking, I am everything I tried to do, I was moving closer and closer to the edge. And fortunately, I was able to get a hold of a man and his friend, and they came with the tractor. And we used to come along on a tree, and we managed to get it straight to the road and get it back down the hill. But I'm thinking, here I am with probably the best M38A1 in Washington State, and I'm just about to drive it over the edge of a hillside covered with trees.
Stories
This
from
is,
the edge, man.
yeah. That,
Yeah, I
that,
saw those pictures and I was like, oh crap. I know exactly what you're talking about, but probably the road has a little bit of a slant to it just to keep the
it did.
water on it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
so you lose traction and it slides that direction. And
Yep. It I was on my way delivering a part off the PBR, the truck that we haul the PBR with, which is also a military truck. And I was going to a mechanic friend. We were going to work it over so we could get the brakes working a little bit better on the PBR. And I thought, oh man, it seemed like a good idea for the 4 or 5 miles that it took to get to this point. Then it didn't seem like such a good idea. So
mhm. Yeah, I mean at Power Wagon Rally, they've had a couple of trucks end up on their side. And this is summer.
uh,
This is
yeah,
yeah, so I
oh
think
man.
there was one truck that it wasn't a military power wagon, but it took three winches, the
Mhm.
winch on the truck and then two others just to get it back vertical again.
Uh,
But
uh, this this Jeep, looking at that photograph, Tim, if you look at the seats, they've got a vinyl cover on them.
uh-huh.
And that was a modification that they did during Vietnam because the canvas was not holding up in the humidity of Vietnam very well.
Hmm.
And the toolbox behind the driver's seat is a World War II GI toolbox. The half doors, Those were actually made by my father in the 60s for his M38A1. And we were doing a display, and a man that was stationed in Germany in the early 60s, he looked at those doors and he goes, that's exactly what we did in Germany. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
needed some kind of protection in the cold weather, and we built those half doors in the mechanic shop. So
Mm-hmm. That's
um,
great.
it's and I have a pedestal mount in it, for a
Mm-hmm.
30 when the weather's right. But
Right. That's super fun. Okay, so my topic for today is really, I mean, you've got military vehicles from 1942
42,
to 1990,
91.
1980, 91. So, like, what are some of the characteristics? I'd say there's probably what, three generations in there, four generations. There's the World War II era, there's the Korean War vintage 50s up into the early 60s, and then there's kind of the stuff that goes beyond that.
Mhm.
Um, so, like, what are some of the pluses and minuses of each of those generations?
I, the 42 GPW Ford Jeep, uh, that's probably my favorite one. It's classic World War II military. And I don't know. I really like that. It really gets a lot of looks and a lot of questions when I have it out. It makes me. Unfortunately, I don't really know the history on the one that I have. It's it's got a hole that was cut in the hood, and then it was repaired. Well, that hole is where they had the fording kit for like D-Day. And I'm thinking, well, was this one overseas and brought back? Did they prep them in the States to do that? And I almost can't see them doing that in the States,
Hmm.
because they did a lot of modifications for storming Normandy over in England. But
Did the Marines do that also? Because I mean, yours may
I
very well be a
I
West
I
Coast.
don't yeah, I don't know. I unfortunately I was not able to find any hood numbers or anything to try and track it down.
Hmm.
Um, and then the 53, I've had that one the longest, and it's National Guard, Army. They procured M38A1s up through 1968.
Hmm.
Most of them that I've seen appear to be from back in the 50s,
Hmm.
but they were making them for other countries and that kind of thing.
Yeah, my dad, from his time in the Army, 1958 to 1960, the same time as Elvis, he drove an M38A1 and then also
Mhm.
the M37 ambulance. I forget what the
Yeah, the
M43
Dodge.
ambulance, I think it
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
M43. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he had one of those. So that was kind of his era. So, and then what about the later era stuff?
I do have a 73 M151A2, and just for a runabout, I the historical value doesn't get me that much on it, but it's a comfortable rig. I mean, you can go across a bumpy field at 25 miles an hour just fine. If you
Hmm.
did that at 42, you would be ejected, when you hit a bump. So I like the M151, but now that I get old, that 1984 M923 5-ton with automatic and power steering and a heater that sometimes works and windshield wipers that sometimes work. That's, and when the weather's bad, it's pretty nice to have that truck.
Yeah, I would
Um,
think so. One of my more memorable experiences in a military vehicle in the Army is I was in uh, one of the 70s era Cut V pickups. I forget what the model number is, but
mhm,
I had a canvas tarp on the back of it, and I was in the passenger seat. We were at Gagetown Canadian Base, which is in New Brunswick,
mhm,
and we're doing a big exercise up there. And the fields up there look really beautiful in the training area, but that's the Canadian one of the Canadian tank training areas. So the field looks beautiful with grass and stuff, but you try and drive across it and it just beats the crap out of you. And I remember I was wearing a helmet
yeah.
because we always had to wear helmets, and I was really glad because I was literally I may have my seatbelt on. I was bouncing from the seat to the top and back, and And I think our first sergeant was driving at that point. I was a brand new second lieutenant at that point. And they just thought it's hilarious that I was just bouncing around inside of this truck. So um yeah,
You,
that was the incident where we shipped all of our military vehicles from our reserve unit in St. Louis up to Canada, and they were supposed to go by rail up to like New Hampshire and then get loaded on flatbeds and then get hauled up there. But then they were like the flatbed had been involved with some sort of a fatal accident, and the highway patrol had impounded it. So the only vehicle that we had was fortunately, we had our 2.5 ton truck with the shelter on the back of it that had all of our gear in it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any gear. And we're a small unit. We had about 25 people. But we had none of our vehicles. So then we ended up borrowing some M151s from the unit we were supporting, but they like wanted them back after like a day. And so we kept hiding them from them. And every time that like the motor pool guy would come on, hey, I need to get those Jeeps back. We're like, oh, it was just right here, like 5 minutes ago. It was just right there, and they just took off. And we had like a wood line, maybe like half a mile away that we would stash them for a week, and then we ended up keeping our rented station wagon with wood grain. I remember we were jumping talk, and we had like Army Aviation supporting us. We had Kiowa Warrior helicopters, and we had the Cav Squadron on the flanks and in 113s. And here we are in the middle of this convoy with our, Buick station wagon with wood grain on the side of it. It was hilarious. But okay,
no, with these old vehicles, it's I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to preserve the history for another generation. But yeah, I was out driving around. I put myself in a hazardous situation with the vehicle, but we've done historical displays for years, and with my 42, we used to go to Fort Stevens, which is the only place in the country that was shelled by the enemy during World War II.
and they
And
hit
we've
the
done a
the
display there for
backstop
years.
of the baseball field, I believe.
Yeah. Well, Fort Stevens there, we used to play what we call blackout tag. We'd go out and we would hide and just run around on our blackout lights. Well, I managed to hit a boulder in the dark, and it pitched the Jeep, and I had a man in the passenger seat. Well, it's such a short wheelbase, and trying to recover, by the time I was able to hit the brakes, I hit with the rear, and it pitched the Jeep again. Well, it threw the guy out on his head on a gravel road. And I'm lucky that I didn't kill the guy. He had road rash on the side of his head, and we did have a real doctor in the unit. He checked him out and picked the rocks out of his head and that kind of thing. But you really have to be careful when you're out using this vintage equipment.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to have a catastrophe.
Yeah, my biggest fear is getting rear-ended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've bought those big safety triangles,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got them on magnets, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I posted some pictures one time, maybe on the G or somewhere, and some guy who is the self-appointed safety triangle Nazi
Mm-hmm.
pops up and says, those are only supposed to be on farm vehicles. They go below a certain amount mile per hour. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is the number of the state highway patrol. Call them
Yeah.
and tell them I'm breaking the law.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I will take my chances breaking that law rather than almost all the catastrophic injuries that happen with older military vehicles.
Mhm.
They either go off the road or they get rear-ended.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we've had any of our World War II vehicles hit, but we were going up to Armed Forces Day at Fort Lewis one time, and we had a convoy going, and we had one of the men was in his civilian vehicle with his four-ways going at the tail end of the convoy, and he was struck from behind in that instance. And if we're doing a mixed convoy, maybe we have World War II and newer, and I have my 5-ton, I go, I'm the linebacker, I'm the tail guy. And that if you want to run into something, run into a 5-ton.
Yeah.
You're going to have a bad day. But we don't want that because it makes the hobby look bad. So
Yeah. Okay, my hot topic of the day is you've got several of your vehicles are original, like
mhm,
unrestored.
yeah.
At what point, at what's the drawing line between original patina and it needs to be restored? Any idea?
I don't know. That's a great area of debate. My my theory is original, or the most original that can be, is best. My 42 Jeep is a restoration. It's not a, it's functional, it's green, it goes and it stops, and most
Mhm.
people wouldn't know that it's not a 1942. Well, it is a 1942, but they wouldn't know that it's
And restored.
restored. But um, I just I think original's best. We see that in the collector car market, where the
Mhm.
values of barn finds, original ones, is a higher value. Um, so my 53 is original. My 77 ambulance is original. My 84 and 91 510s are original. Um, and I think original's best. That's my M151. It's as I found it, but it was one of the ones that was cut in half and repaired. And somebody put that ambulance is original condition.
Mhm.
It's got its shortfalls, it's got dings, and the paint isn't real pretty, but it's the original paint. That's the original markings that somebody put with grease pen on the dash, for a move. And
Mhm.
it's I don't know. That one there, it's covered, but it's 30,709 miles in that picture.
Mhm.
I think it's okay to replace maintenance items, tires, belts, oils, all the fluids, of course. Any seals that you need,
Right.
so that
Basic
you don't,
maintenance.
yeah, basic maintenance items. I think that's fine, but I think the more original, they're only original ones.
Yeah.
So, the best you can do to keep it that way. Um, this one is damaged. It's got snow on it there, and you can't really see it. But the overhang, somebody had, before I got it, they'd driven under a low spot, and it's got a dent in it. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I haven't. It's beyond my ability to get it to pop out. One of these days I'll do that. But essentially, it's mission capable and operational to the way it was originally designed right now.
Mhm. I think it's a lovely vehicle, and you can sleep in it too
Yeah.
if you need
I,
to.
I did make one concession. I put power steering in it. And what I've found, I've seen a couple Air Force Dodge series trucks like this, and the Air Force had power steering, but of course the Army didn't.
Mhm.
So I did make a concession there, but boy, that makes
Yeah.
it really nice.
I can't remember whether our vehicles had those. Well, actually, my unit didn't have these. We were authorized cut a couple cut V's, and then we had Gamma Goat.
Uh-huh.
And
Sure.
of course, the Gamma Goats we kept them at like a storage site, and we never saw them ever. Never
Uh-huh.
wanted to see them,
Yeah.
but we would borrow. Not necessarily the ambulance model, but some of the other ones from the general hospital that was in the same building as us, and I don't think I actually ever drove them. I guess I didn't trust the LT with a something as valuable as a Dodge pickup.
Now
Anyway.
this vehicle, back in the ambulance compartment, it's fully equipped. It has the litters and the racks, and the overhead lights, and everything that it's supposed to have. Um, the only thing that doesn't work on this is it's supposed to have a spotlight over the windshield, and the horn button. I haven't been able to get one to pop in there right, so I don't know if I need to change the wheel. But
Hmm. I figure before we go, I figure I'll show off your GPW.
yep, there it is.
There you are.
That
Some
was
kind of an air show, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's an air show. I'm just trying to remember which one. We've done so many over the years. Um, I don't even remember which one that is. But then
May 28th, 2018.
May 28th, 18.
So Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. Shoot, I do. I sometimes do 20, 25 outreaches a year. And I've been doing it for 40 years. So I don't remember.
Yeah, and
But
that's the thing that's so great about where you're at, because there's just a whole plethora of things to do. And I
yeah,
can count on one hand the stuff that goes on around here. We're trying to get things
yeah,
going, but
yeah, we do, I'm an MVPA member. We have the Friends of Willie and Joe, which we've had for 25 years. I did my first historical display in 81, and my specialty was Army Air Force World War II. And then Friends of Willie and Joe is kind of oriented towards 45th Division.
mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of times we get called to do other things. And so I started a Friends of Kilroy. So Kilroy was everywhere. So if you call and you need something different, we can do it under that heading.
Because
And
Willie and Joe is a reference to Bill Malden,
right, right.
which would
Yeah.
be 45th.
Yeah, Bill Malden's cartoon character. I've started, one thing good for me that happened with COVID was it gave me an opportunity to work on my old building. And so I've got one side set up as a museum.
Mm-hmm.
So in conjunction with Armed Forces Day and 4th of July and Veterans Day, we've had open houses there. And last year I was emphasizing 30 years since Desert Storm. So I had displays pertaining to that. But I have some property beside the museum that we can bring vehicles and set up tents and
Mm-hmm.
do historic displays that way. Um, but when another thing that people might be interested in, it's how do you figure, one of the arguments for years, how do you figure rank? Well, my theory and my study of it for the years, if you had a rank, if you were in and you had a rank and you earned it, fine, use that rank. If you don't, be age appropriate, be, now I'm so old, shoot, I'm older than Patton was in World War II, but you know, what I do when I'm a living mannequin. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just there. I have the equipment. If you ask about it, I can tell you about my equipment, how it was used, when it was used, what it was used for. So I'm like a living mannequin as opposed to a museum where you see a mannequin and it just sits there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, hey, the good news is you're probably still younger than Winfield Scott during the Civil War. So,
yeah. I mean,
and,
one of the amazing things that happened, it's been probably 15 years ago, the Army called me and uh, Randall Shukart, Black Hawk Down, one of the Medal of
mm-hmm.
Honor recipients, they called and asked if I could do a stand-in for him at a company dinner. And I said, I didn't have military time. Oh, that's okay. And I said, they asked, do you have this, this, and this? And I said, yes, I do. And I said, you guys are the Army. You have everything in the world. What do you mean? And he said, well, that's obsolete and we don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I, got my hair cut and got squared away and my uniform was squared away. And I went up there and I did a stand-in for,
Mm-hmm.
I think Sergeant First Class Shukart. And,
Yeah, he actually one of my bosses in the military was him and Gordon's platoon leader in one of the Ranger battalions. I forget which battalion, maybe second battalion, first battalion. So
but no,
okay,
I
well,
mean, I'll tell you one more thing, Tim, because
sure.
of this hobby, it's taken me to the beaches of Normandy, the hills of Belgium and Bastogne and the Battle of the Bulge. I've been on the dock on December 7th in Pearl Harbor, at 6 o'clock in the morning, waiting for the Japanese planes to fly overhead. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, being associated with this and the people that you meet and that I worked for a man in Oklahoma, and one day something was said and he goes, oh, I was with Audie Murphy. And I thought every man I met in the 3rd Division was with Audie Murphy. But a few weeks later, we're at his house and there's a book on the 3rd Division. It has all the guys in the division listed. And I'm looking through it and I go, WR, where are you? And he grabs a book, flips the pages. Sergeant Audie Murphy, squad leader, Private Willis R. Witten. He was in Audie Murphy's squad,
Yeah.
and it just, man, it's just history comes alive.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
we
why
met
we
Hella
do this.
Patton together.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sit in well, I think it was Carentan and have a
Mhm.
Coke with General Patton on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
It's just amazing stuff.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up here, Pete. And
okay.
thanks for taking some time with us. I'm sure people are going to love your stories and enjoy looking at your vehicles. And I'm looking forward to getting back together sometime. And someday I'm going to talk you out of that GP. So
Yeah, it's still sitting in the shed. At least it's dry and it's safe. So,
yeah.
but
Well,
anyway, well, thank you.
the slat's keeping me busy for now, but you never know. Well,
Yeah,
I may not want to do anything after the slat.
yeah,
So, but
yeah.
anyway, man. Hey, it's great talking to you. And
Nice.
hey, everybody, thanks for joining in, and we'll catch you on the next one.